So I saw the latest trailer for Morbius, and it's been a while since we'd heard anything about Morbius due to, of course, the lockdown and all that messed up quite a few things, and that includes things in the entertainment world. So the previous teaser had quite a few tantalizing things in it, but not about the movie itself, but rather its placement within the Spider-Man universe, if you will, which has its feet in two different studios, that being Sony and, of course, Marvel under Disney. So Sony has done a lot of teasing, suggesting that there was going to be some crossover, and then there's rumors that in the Venom film there was some scenes taped with Tom Holland and all of that, and maybe so, and Disney wanted that reined in or what have you. But going forward, we'll see what's what, if anything. But of course, there's an image of Spider-Man in the trailer. It's in here again. It looks to be the Tobey Maguire version, but considering what's going on with multiverse and Doctor Strange and all that, anything's possible. And then there's of course Michael Keaton, and appearing, is he playing the Vulture character here? And it looks to be incarcerated and all that sort of stuff, which is where Spider-Man movies left him. So it's interesting, which would seem to be that there may have been some cooperation and a plan laid down for that. And it's intriguing considering what's going on with the Spider-Man movie and everything, and the Venom movie. Yeah, a little tease, but not a whole thing. I mean, in the sequel, which I didn't really care for, but the movie has to be a movie, and so it has little teases of other things to draw people in, I'm sure, since the average moviegoer, which now very much is aware of Marvel and Spider-Man and all that, they don't know anything about Morbius. But what is the movie and what it appears to be? It appears to be a horror movie, and a classic horror movie in the sense of stories like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and the Wolfman, and certainly the Venom film took on some of these elements of, the monster within and this sort of thing, a little bit different, and they did it more for comedic purposes with Venom, and a little too much of that in its sequel, in my opinion. But here with Morbius, it looks to be a much darker story of this tortured man who's brought down by this illness that he's suffering, and he's trying to find a cure, and he's this brilliant doctor, and he thinks he's found it, and he's going to cure other people who have the same disease and all this stuff, and his motivation is perfectly noble, and and all that, and heroic even, and yet it goes so very wrong. And there's a lot of lessons of messing with forces you shouldn't mess with in horror stories, all the way through Frankenstein and whatnot. And this appears to be the case here. That's the plot of what happens to him. And they're throwing around anti-hero. Yeah, somewhat. I mean, it was back and forth with Morbius. And Venom kind of did the same thing eventually. But this, the anti-hero idea of the interactions between Morbius and Spider-Man. As far as, due to the situation as it is and what cooperation they have in the usage of a Spider-Man character for these films, I don't know. And the idea of Morbius being in his own film, which means you have to lift elements of his story, but not in the way it was in the Spider-Man comics. And certainly not like in the cartoon series in the 90s, which is probably about as good as you're going to get as an adaptation of Spider-Man from the comic books and other media. Even though they used the elements and retold them in different ways, is an example of it was like the Hobgoblin came first and the Green Goblin second and that sort of thing in that version, but they captured the essences of those stories and characters and whatnot. And Morbius was no different in that the sad story of what happens to him and his experimentation. Here, he has a more noble a motive here for what he's doing, and so that gives it a more tortured and tormented type deal, where the horror is not so much the fear of the monster, but even more so when you are the monster, and can he control this monster he's created? And odds are not really. So it's got a lot of spooky imagery, mysterious stuff, and that's within the story. Of course, again, the teases of potential connections to Spider-Man, which Spider-Man, and all that stuff, and what's their plan, and what's the big reveal. There's rumors that the No Way Home is going to reveal a lot of stuff you haven't thought of yet, perhaps. I mean, obviously, the other two Spider-Men are going to be in it. I mean, I think that's a really, maybe it's brief and whatnot, but nevertheless, something of that nature. And it could open up possibilities of how they'll handle this, where Sony does its own Spider-Man. Whether Tom Holland will be Spider-Man for them going forward and all that, wait and see. Well, how the two movies play out. But Morbius is shot, so they could add in little teases here and there. I mean, what's Michael Keaton doing there? What's the poster doing there? And very much it is in the same world that Venom exists in. He mentions Venom in the trailer. He's making a joke that he is Venom to this guy who's scared of him. And he says, no, I'm Michael Morbius. But the fact that he does that and people are aware of Venom, then, that adds a little more to this. So Sony wants its own Spider-Verse, and Venom was a success. The sequel, which I don't think was very good, not as good as the first one, it made its money. So they've got some gold here. And just based on what I've seen here, certainly the universe building stuff and Easter eggs and whatnot is intriguing. You can't deny that, and it's there for that reason, to draw in more people. But I think overall the story looks interesting enough, and it looks like a pretty good trailer. It's just your basic horror movie thing, with the ultimate horror being sadness, and I think it's going to be a very sad thing for Morbius here, despite all his better efforts. And so that sounds like a pretty good film to me. So they may have yet another little hit here. Because it wasn't so certain about Venom when it was coming, and but the thing about these films, even the one I didn't particularly like, it's still rather simplified adventure movies, and that's very good. And there's a huge hunger for that, almost as hungry as Morbius is for blood. And if they stick to that, and that's pretty much what you've got this horror sort of / adventure thing, where they're chasing Morbius and all that. But at the same time, it's more akin to a horror movie than Venom was, and I think that would work very well for it. Even if it can only tease Spider-Man and not actually have actual connections to a Spider-Man movie that they may be able to negotiate later. But nevertheless, the movie has the potential to stand on its own. So, I think it looks to be pretty good. Could be completely wrong, and they screwed it all up, and we only saw the good parts, and the rest of it is this nauseating crap. But probably not. I mean, keep it simple to a horror movie, and you'll probably do well. So anyway, there we are. Morbius, looks like they've got something there. Thanks for watching and listening. Say, while you're still here, why not like and subscribe and share with your many friends? Yes. Also, check out my mini stores in the link description below. Yes, where you can get t-shirts, hats, mugs, all those goodies with my artwork on them. Oh, yeah. And head over to indieplanet.com and pick up a copy of my comic book, Night Night. Oh, yeah. You can also catch me at my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, on RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos on BitChute.com and now on Rumble.com. Oh, my goodness, so many places to watch me and my stuff. Oh, yeah. And if that's not enough for you, well, you can follow me on many social media platforms and say hi to your old pal, Mr. Nailsin.